What's up, beautiful people? Okay, well, thanks for your time and thank you for all you listeners taking an interest in taking the time to check out, see what I'm talking about. I think this will probably be the most explosive little talk yet. I'd like to discuss the subject of TIs, it means targeted individuals, and gang stalkers. Gang stalking is actually something that the police have legalized. You can look it up under community policing. That's what they call it. When the police come to you, your neighbors, guys at the grocery store, everyone around you, and talk to the people about you and tell them lies about you and get them to do specific things to cater to the police or the government or the feds or the CIA. A lot of times they tell the public that they're with the cops, and they're really not. I mean, if you've seen movies and know how they operate, any Black Ops Fed agent can pose as FBI, CIA, or especially a policeman. So then I would like to get into the subject of HAARP cars. Now, HAARP cars, you may have not heard of them, but trust me, in the future, very soon they're going to be becoming very popular because they're the government's biggest secret. I strongly urge you to look up a subject on YouTube. There's plenty of nice videos. They're called silent weapons. Now, silent weapons were designed to kill people silently, discreetly, without leaving a trace. So basically, this is what they use on TIs, targeted individuals, silent weapons. Now, if you go to YouTube, there's a wonderful video called Silent Weapons, Silent Wars, where a lady actually has the government document and she reads to you from 1979 when these weapons actually came in use, when the document was actually given to the government. What it actually says and what it details, and it's very unbelievable because they actually say if this document or if these weapons would ever come to the public attention, they would be held in contempt of war criminals and other things because these weapons are against humanity. They're called silent weapons. Now, when you get into HAARP cars, basically a HAARP car is a car outfitted with a microwave weapon. Now, what I mean by a microwave weapon is what the government has been doing is they've been doing experiments on people silently and discreetly in neighborhoods throughout the United States. It was actually started with Project Phoenix and Project Paperclip or Operation Paperclip when the U.S. brought the Nazis over to the United States, and the Nazis continued to do their experiments on innocent Americans in secret, and the American government was silently taken over by Nazis. If you look at the history of the Bushes, if you look at the history of the Clintons, if you look at the history of the 13 bloodlines, you will see this is pretty obvious. And if you look at the history of eugenics, you will see it's really obvious what has happened here in America. Now, when you get into the Nazis running experiments on people in silence with silent weapons and HAARP cars. Now, let me explain to you what exactly a HAARP car is. It is a car that is outfitted with a silent weapon. So they can actually pull up to your home or pull up behind you and blast you with a microwave beam and fill your room and fill your body with microwaves. Now, what I suspect they've actually done is they've also reverse engineered a lot of the Rife technology. I don't know if you know about Royal Rife. He's the man that discovered the cure for cancer, discovered the cure for AIDS, and a lot of other things through electronic vibrational properties. Now, when you get into electrical vibrational properties, the human cell vibrates at 152 hertz, a cell that is healthy. Now, a sick cell vibrates below this. Now, when the Rife technology came out, the American government stomped on it. The man that actually sold my family this Rife that I have sitting next to me is in jail for 50 years for selling this in the United States. Now, I actually know a lot about the Rife community because my mother, she basically was friends with one of the first people who actually started distributing the Rife technology here in Houston, Texas. And actually, she helped a lot of rogue government agents heal because dead men tell no tales. And what I mean by dead men tell no tales is simply that if you die, your secrets die with you. So if you become a government agent, they're going to give you cancer, they're going to give you AIDS, they're going to give you some kind of disease that is going to make you die when they want you to, and quickly. So this woman that my mom studied under and worked with, she helped a lot of government agents stay alive. She took a lot of parasites out of them. Microwave technology is basically catering to parasites. And what I mean by parasites is, what is a parasite? Something that lives off of you. A parasitic host. It attaches itself to one of your organs and lives off that organ, and this organ will catch cancer. Say it's your heart, your lung, your liver, your breast. I mean, parasites cause diseases, very deadly diseases, because simply when you get sick, that is your body's way of telling you, when you get cancer or something like that, that is your body's way of telling you there's something very wrong. Usually it is a parasite that has grown inside that organ and is shutting that organ down. So if you want to know more about parasites, they do exist. They're actually really disgusting. If you really want to know what they look like, if you've ever seen Stargate, they look like a guaul, those little slimy lizard things that would go in your stomach. They actually look like those, and they can get that big. Terry, or the lady, well, I'll say her name. Her name's Terry. The lady that my mom worked with, she actually used to have jars of parasites that she pulled out of people, and some of them were so unbelievable because she wanted the people to see what was growing inside of them and why they were sick, and she pulled them out of the people. Now, these things were really incredible. Now, when you get into HAARP cars and microwave technology, I've come to a very deep understanding of actually what the government is actually doing with GMOs, genetically modified organisms. What they've actually done is they've made genetic modified organisms that are parasitic, that are very nuclear reactive, and that respond to microwave programming. Now, what I mean by respond to microwave programming is they respond to microwave programming. And basically, microwave programming, you can program microwaves through your cell phone. You can program microwaves through your wireless network. You can program microwaves through silent weapons, through HAARP cars. Now, if you've ever seen the new cop cars, they've got laptops in their car. So imagine a HAARP car. They have a laptop in their car, or an iPad, or even a very advanced cell phone that is interfaced with their car, and their car has a silent weapon in the car, and they control the silent weapon with their interface through the cell phone. This is the year 2013. This is what they are doing. These are silent weapons. These are very deadly weapons. And if you're a TI, like me, a targeted individual, you know them very well. Now, let me tell you why I'm a TI. One of the reasons is because of what the holistic healer doctor did. She had an office over by NASA. When I was growing up, I saw her very frequently. If you know about NASA, well, basically NASA was housed all the Nazi space scientists. when they came over to the United States. Actually, they went to a base in San Antonio and started working on Project Phoenix. And then through Project Phoenix, they eventually went over to NASA. So Terry, it was like a key place for her to be, because basically she had these government agents coming to her that were getting sick, very ill, and not knowing why, and she was able to cure them. Now, they targeted my family because of her and because of what she was doing and because of what my mother was doing with her. Now, also, another reason is because I won't say his first name, but for the people that know me, I'm going to blow your mind about some history about my family that you don't know from when I was a kid, say 15, 16, 17 years old. Now, the Treadways, everybody knows him. I'm going to say his DJ name, DJ Exit, from the rave scene. I grew up with him. He was my best friend. But before anybody knew who he was, before anybody heard of me, before anybody heard of him, when we were just friends, his father is, I'm going to be straight with you, is a rapist. Okay? His father raped him. His father would get drunk, come home, and molest Chris. Chris was a child. Now, there were many times growing up that Chris would come over to my house throwing rocks at the window, ask if he could stay the night, because his father would come home drunk and start hitting on him, and he would just run out and leave, or he'd leave before his father would get home. And this is how I grew up. Now, me and Chris got into some trouble and things, and he wasn't too favored by my mother. And when I told my mother what was happening to him, she opened her mouth at her work, because everybody knew everybody in the neighborhood. Is kind of a small community, but she didn't really understand how small it was. Now, she had told like one of her friends, and some people overheard her, what happened to Chris, and this circulated around the neighborhood that Chris's father was hitting him, molesting him, beating his own kid. Okay? Now, this got around to everyone in the neighborhood, and Chris's father lost his job at NASA. Yeah, Chris's father was working at NASA. He wasn't a scientist. He just got a cushy job because of who Chris's father was. Now, let me tell you about Chris's father. Chris's father's father. Chris's father's father was a Operation Paperclip relocated Nazi. Now, I know because when my friend Chris was, when his father wasn't home, Chris would tell me stuff about his father, and his father was really racist because his father actually destroyed my $500 bike. My father bought for me a dyno. He picked up a huge rock and completely bashed my bike, and it just devastated me because I left it at Chris's house one day when me and Chris went to walk around the neighborhood. So anyway, he was very, very racist, and he always hated me. I knew Chris's father hated me because my friend Mike one day told me don't go over to Chris's house because it's a trip when I leave, because Mike would stay sometimes and talk to Chris's dad, and then Chris's dad would actually turn into a completely different person. He'd be really nice to me, really cordial, really just a great guy, but right when I closed that door, he'd be like, damn, I hate niggers. Damn, I can't stand, and he'd just start this racist rant, and Mike couldn't believe it. So one day Mike told me what his dad was and did, and I asked Chris, and he's like, yeah, my dad's a Nazi. And I said, yeah, right, your dad's a Nazi. The Nazis are dead. And Chris smiled at me, and he laughed. He's like, no way, man. No, it's really not. I was like, Chris, bullshit. He's like, really? My dad's a Nazi. I was like, so that's why he hits you so much? And Chris is like, I'll prove it to you. So one day when Chris's dad wasn't home, Chris invited me over. He took out his dad's Nazi plates. He took out his father's Nazi crosses. He took out his father's Nazi uniforms. He had a bunch of like silver and gold, like Nazi coins, really rare coins, and other coins that the Nazis had stolen that were worth a shitload of money, because Chris actually pawned a lot of those coins. And when his father found out, Chris almost got killed by his dad. So anyway, It's really, really, really true. So, because I saw all that Nazi memorabilia when I was a kid, I became a TI. Now, shortly after Chris's father discovered that Chris had gotten into his Nazi stuff and stolen some coins, he probably figured that I saw him, and then the word got around the neighborhood about what he did to Chris, and he lost his job at NASA, and he started being a used car salesman for Ford. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about how these Nazis operate, because I became a targeted individual because of this, and also not to mention because I'm sovereign, and my grandfather's a Nubian Blackfoot Moor, and I also have Breed Love Lovejoy Ewing blood in my family, and that makes me royal. So once these Nazis looked into my background, it was pretty obvious that I was a key subject to become a targeted individual because of what I could expose or what I knew or what I saw. I mean, how far do you think the government would go to cover up one of their CIA relocated Freemason Nazis? They would go all out. They would even go all out to have people in the J. Edgar Hoover fat suits. Now, if you don't know about J. Edgar Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover designed different suits so he could go out in public and not be recognized. And eventually they grew into what you call a fat suit. This is why you have like the movie Big Mama, and you have Martin Lawrence in Big Mama and all that stuff. And people laugh at it and they think it's funny, but it's actually real. And this stuff was actually perfected during J. Edgar Hoover's time, because he was supposedly, they said he was a cross-dresser and a faggot. So if you know about the Illuminati and the Freemasons, this would make a perfect opportunity for them to hide or to infiltrate families. I mean, they have voice recognition software and equipment to change their algorithms on phones. So I just simply say it's 2013. They can apply this into a fat suit and basically take the identity of anyone you know, and especially if they're really fat, because here in Houston, Texas, there's a lot of people that are huge. And if you know the history of Houston, it's really not considered, technically and geographically and historically speaking, it is not a town. Houston, Texas is not a town. Houston is geographically considered a cattle town. Okay, because it was a place where they built, and basically where they would bring slaves and trade cattle. Now, it's considered a cattle town, not even a town, not even a city. Okay, so that's what I meant. It's not considered a city or a town, it's a cattle town. It's very different. A cattle town was a place that was just set up to import, export things, and that's it. And Houston grew into what it is today. It's one of the largest cities right here in Houston, Texas, and all the Nazis were brought here, relocated here. If you know about Houston, Texas, and the Republicans, they have a saying: if you can control Texas, you can control the United States, because all the Nazis were brought here. All the Skull and Bones, the Bushes, all of them were brought here. Before Bush stole the election and became president, he was governor of Texas. You know, everybody knew his history. Now I'm gonna break something down to you that's a little bit explosive. Another thing about my father. While my father became a targeted individual, it's about his brother, his younger brother. My father was the head of 14 kids. Now his baby brother worked 2 summers to afford a moped. Okay? So the second summer, when he finally got the money for the moped, the first day he got the money for the moped and he bought it, on his way home, he stopped at a 7-Eleven. He got a big gulp. He was sitting on his bike. Some racist guys came and they said, get away from that bike, nigger. That's not your bike. And he said, yeah, it is. And they started pushing him. and started racially attacking him. He just got on the bike, started it, and left. These men, well, actually these young boys at the time, ran him into a ditch and broke his neck. Two of these sons were Bushes. Was young Bush, what's his name? Walker Bush, and the other was George Bush Sr. Now, these are things that have been highly just swept under the rug, not talked about my family. My father was a Ewing. My father was given land by Lincoln. We have that land in our family in Navasota, Texas. If you don't know the history of Lincoln, there used to be a Lincoln Park in Navasota, Texas, and they used to call it the real Lincoln Park because Lincoln's house was there, Lincoln's bed was there. Before they moved everything to Washington, this was when I was a kid, and they took all of Lincoln's stuff from Navasota and moved it to Washington and totally wiped over that Lincoln had any history in Texas, which Lincoln was considered our first black, one of our first black presidents. He wasn't the first one because he was mixed. He had black blood in his family. I mean, my big daddy was his cousin. If you do your research on the name Ewing, you will find that the Ewings are related to the Lincolns, and the Lincolns related to the Bushes. So what you actually have is the Bushes actually killed one of their own relatives, which is nothing out of the ordinary here in Texas because they would do it all the time. I mean, the slave master would want some, chocolate pussy, and basically they'd have a kid, and if that kid stepped out of line, they would think twice about killing that kid. They'd actually be happy because then they would sever the bloodline. So then when you get into targeted individuals and TIs and what they've been doing to the Nuwabi Moor and the sovereign people and what they've been doing to me and my family for a very, very, very long time, I have no need to lie because I know my history. Now, if I ever have my day in court, if I ever have my day in court and brought this stuff to the public eye, the public would be outraged. That's why I'm making this video. They have done so many diabolical things to my family in secret, using silent weapons on me and my home every night. I left to Europe for 7-8 years, and the only people that would listen to me in Europe was a Russian agent named Anna Chapman. She actually, okay, let me break something down to you about Anna Chapman. FBI, you didn't bust Anna Chapman. It was all a ruse, okay? Anna Chapman got arrested and she gave herself up, and the guy that gave them up it was all a ruse. Okay? Because Anna Chapman wanted to come back over to Europe because of what I was doing over in Europe and the things that I was doing over in Europe. The Russians really had to see it because I was actually letting so many secrets out on the American public and the American government. And once they ran my background and checked into my family, they really knew that I was the real deal. So then you have C.I.A. I know you don't know what the C.I.A. is. C.I.A. is the Romanian secret police. Basically, they got into what I was doing. And then Interpol came over and got into what I was doing because my girlfriend came up missing because of this gangster called Nicăgăru. He is into human trafficking. If you know about Romania and the gypsies, he's a gypsy. He also traffics women with Liviu Moranu. Nicăgăru owns the fashion TV Romania. I know it all. I went and investigated it all as a DJ. Plenty of people talk to me about what they do. I mean, the girls behind the stage or backstage that work and dance and actually are prostitutes, and they actually broke everything down to me. And this is why I'm so educated about all of this. And so in Romania, when I started doing my videos in front of fashion TV, in front of all the female cartels establishments, nobody could believe that I was alive the next day to do it again. So here I am still in Houston, Texas, being stalked by silent weapons, trying to expose what they've done to my family, what they've done to me, what they've done in secret, and how they have government agents replacing people in fat suits, doing things and changing my family's IDs, fingerprints, everything. I mean, we're talking about the CIA, we're talking about Skull and Bones, we're talking about the Nazi movement that is in charge and that built silent weapons. The same silent weapons that they use on their own government agents when they find out that the CIA is a Nazi establishment. That the government is basically secretly being taken over by Nazis and the Rothschilds and the Federal Reserve. Now let me tell you about the Rothschilds. I'm going to leave you with this. The Rothschilds print the American dollar and the euro and run the Federal Trade and Trust Bank of the United States. They are German. The name Rothschild is a German name because of the way they spell it. The spelling actually means red shield in German. So Evelyn Rothschild was considered one of the richest men in the world up into recent events and the audit as of October 5th being put on the Federal Reserve, which should have started September 15th because of the black reparations lawsuit, but it didn't happen because of September 11th. Another Rothschild hit on millions of Americans, and they've continued to kill billions and billions of people every year behind this bullshit war that was started by Tim Osman. That's Osama bin Laden, that was in bed with the Bushes through Arbusto Energies here in Houston, Texas, back in the 80s. Osama bin Laden's father was the biggest investor in Bush's company, Arbusto Energies, back in the 80s. Now, what I mean by Osama bin Laden's father, Osama bin Laden's wife's father, so it's his father too, was the biggest investor. So the Bushes have been in bed with Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda since the 80s. I like to call it C.I.A. Al-Qaeda. Okay? Now, when you get into the whole ruse of what they've been doing and how the world is too stupid to put everything together, and it's like this, you can see the big picture. Now, when you get into the Rothschilds, I spent some time in France because this is where the Ceres, this is where the Russians sent me. Rather than having me come back to the United States, they sent me to a little bit get trained by the French Foreign Legion. Legionnaires, bless you, what's up, respect. I mean, the Legionnaires are actually foreign legions of men that protect France. Now, the reason why, let me explain to you why France has the Legionnaires, okay? Let me explain to you about France and what I explained to the French, and it blew their minds, okay? And I do this every day on the street. Now, the French Foreign Legion, they're fierce, they're just unstoppable, they're incredible. Now, the reason why they're incredible and they go through such hard training and become the best of the best of the best of the best is because France and the French, they're really fierce. And the French don't take bullshit, especially what the Nazis did to the French and their kids. If you haven't seen 90 Days of Sodom and seen what the Nazis actually did to the French kids when the Nazis came there, I saw the movie once. It was unbelievable. I will just tell you this. It is for the strong-minded. And these motherfuckers took the French kids and trained them and made them do S&M stuff and made them literally and trained them literally to eat and like eating shit. Now, I'm not, and I don't mean that hypothetically speaking. Now, this movie is only for the headstrong, and it's a true story. Now, when you get into France and the French Legion and what they did, or what they do for the French, they protect the French. Now, one thing that I want to explain to you is about foreign legions. Now, what I mean by foreign legions is the actual words, foreign legions. This comes from France, where the Nazis took over, and Evelyn Rothschild owns, or did own, more property in France as of a year ago than any Frenchman. The France was like Rothschild world. It's their shitting place. Okay, so basically, the government, the Nazi government in France, knows that the French soldiers, the French army, the French force will not kill its own people. So they have the French Foreign Legion to come in to do this if France ever has a problem. Now this is why you have all of these other forces like the UN. They're another foreign legion that is threatening to come into the United States if the United States gets out of control with FEMA and all of those organizations. This is why they exist, because they know that a U.S. military or a French military or a English military will not come in and police and kill its own people. So then when you get into the French Foreign Legion, you go through the Legionnaires, and a lot of the Legionnaires become policing the French. Do you know how French treat foreigners? They treat foreigners like shit. So the Legionnaires really don't like the French, and I try to explain this to the French. I would try to tell the French on the streets, you need to start treating foreigners, and especially ones you don't know, a little bit better, because they might be a Legionnaire, and you guys treat foreigners like shit, and treating Legionnaires like shit. They're your police, and they're your Foreign Legion, and they're the guys that will come in and shoot you and kill you if their government says so. And they won't have a problem doing it. So this is why they get Foreign Legions. In Foreign Legions, they have Russians. They don't like Americans. They have Frenchmen. They don't like Americans. They have guys from the UK. They have guys from Romania. They don't like Americans. So this is what the UN forces are made up of, and they know this. Okay? And so imagine they start outfitting these guys with silent weapons and the big shebang, or they start hiring these guys as mercenaries and going in on Americans in secret. Imagine what they've been doing in secret. Now, I strongly urge you to see a movie and listen to what this lady is saying. I posted it on my Facebook today, and it's in my favorites. My page is Zakaos Breedlove on Facebook. It used to be Zakaos Sound System. I changed it. It's Zakaos Breedlove. Just type in Zakaos, Zakaos, and you can find my channel. I favorited this video, Silent Weapons for Silent Wars. And I am silent no more, okay? I am Zakaos. Thank you for your time, just exposing the truth about what they're doing to me every day. I even have, as I sit here, silent weapon car parked outside, which is vibrating my floor. Which, you know, I sleep on the floor, I have a bad back, and I can feel them when they drive up and start their shit. Oh, and one thing I would like to expose is microchips. Now, microchips, what they actually do with mercury chips, they have a little vase. They showed this, the Legionnaires showed these things to me. Now, they're in a little case of mercury that pretty much evaporates once it's broke. Now, these chips, they hit it with a program beam, which they program the mercury with your algorithm. And what I mean by your algorithm, the algorithm of your brain. And then these chips, once they evaporate, they actually become microscopic through the air. And they go through the air and float into your membrane. And basically, they become microbiotic chips. They create blocks. They send out alpha waves. They can be picked up through cell phones, wireless networks, a bunch of different things. These are another silent weapons that these Nazis are using against the black public and TIs. Thank you for your time. I am Zakaos. Have a beautiful day. Tell a friend. And don't forget to watch Silent Weapons for Silent Wars. Peace.